The afternoon sun was heavy over the small-town gas station, the kind of place where life moved slowly and strangers rarely crossed paths for more than a fleeting moment. Danielle, tired from her long day of work, pulled up to pump her gas. She wasn't expecting anything unusual, just a quick stop before heading home. But as she stepped out of her car, her eyes caught a man at the next pump. He was hard to miss, tall, broad, dressed in a worn leather vest stitched with patches, his motorcycle leaning against the curb. Everything about him looked fierce and untouchable, the kind of person most would instinctively keep their distance from. Yet what Danielle noticed wasn't his appearance, but the uncertainty in his movements. He was checking his pockets, fumbling through his wallet, then staring down at the pump as though the numbers on the screen were mocking him. For a moment, his shoulders slumped, the weight of quiet embarrassment settling in. Danielle didn't think twice. She walked over, swiped her card, and in a gentle voice said, "Don't worry, I've got you." The man froze, looking at her with disbelief. In his world, kindness often came with strings attached, but there was no judgment in her eyes, just simple humanity. His rough exterior softened, and with a gruff, almost hesitant, "Thank you," he accepted. Danielle only smiled, as if what she'd done was the most ordinary thing in the world. Then she returned to her car, never imagining how far that single act would reach. Driving away from the gas station, Danielle hardly gave the moment another thought. For her, it was just second nature. If someone was in need and she could help, then why wouldn't she? But for the man she'd helped, the gesture lingered like an echo he couldn't shake. Riding back on his motorcycle, the sound of the engine was drowned out by the memory of her voice and the ease of her smile. In his world, people rarely offered anything without suspicion, especially not to someone who looked like him, a rough-edged biker with scars on his hands and a reputation that made most people cross the street. That's why her kindness cut deeper than he could put into words. All night, he thought about it. It wasn't the money that mattered, it was the fact that a stranger had looked at him and seen a human being, not a threat. The more he replayed the moment, the more it felt like something sacred. He told his brothers about her, the ones he rode with, who shared his life on the open road. They listened quietly, then one of them muttered, "Not many people would have done that." Another nodded, saying, "That kind of respect deserves to be repaid." Danielle, meanwhile, was at home, busy with her normal routine, washing dishes, checking on her kids, winding down for the evening. She had no idea that her small act of generosity had planted a seed, one that was already spreading roots among a circle of men who lived by loyalty, gratitude, and unspoken codes of honor. The next morning began like any other for Danielle. She brewed her coffee, let the sunlight spill across her kitchen table, and listened to the soft hum of her neighborhood waking up. But just as she was settling into the rhythm of a quiet day, a low rumble stirred in the distance. At first, she thought it was thunder rolling in, but the sound grew louder, sharper, and steadier, like a storm made of engines. Curious and uneasy, she stepped to the window. What she saw made her heart skip. A long line of motorcycles was crawling down her street, chrome glinting under the morning sun. They weren't passing through. They were stopping. Her chest tightened as the bikes parked one by one, filling the curb outside her modest home. Leather jackets, steel boots, patches stitched with skulls and flames. It was an intimidating sight that seemed more like something out of a movie than her quiet little block. She held her breath as the man from the gas station dismounted his bike and walked toward her front door. He wasn't alone. Dozens of riders stood behind him, silent, their presence heavy but not hostile. Danielle's first thought was fear. Had she unknowingly done something wrong? What could this mean? Before she could answer her own questions, a knock echoed through the house. She hesitated, her hand trembling on the doorknob. Then she opened it, just a crack, and there he was, the same rugged biker she had helped the day before, his expression softened with something she didn't expect, gratitude. Danielle stood frozen in the doorway, unsure of what would happen next. The man from the gas station shifted his weight, his eyes meeting hers with a sincerity that seemed to strip away the intimidating armor of leather and patches. Behind him, the line of bikers remained still, their engines quiet now, their silence carrying more weight than words. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, in a voice roughened by years of hard living, he said, "You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. But you helped me when you could have just walked away. That matters." Danielle swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. She hadn't thought her small gesture meant much, just a swipe of a card, a smile, a reminder of the good she wanted to see in the world. Yet the way he spoke, she realized it had meant everything. He stepped aside, gesturing to the sea of riders behind him. "We wanted you to know that we don't forget things like that. We ride for respect. And today, we ride for you." The words hit her like a wave. She blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment. These men, who looked like shadows of danger to the world outside, were standing here because of kindness, her kindness. The weight of their loyalty, their gratitude, was almost too much to bear. In that instant, Danielle understood something she'd never felt so clearly: compassion has the power to bridge divides, to reach hearts hardened by years of judgment and distance, and to remind us that humanity is never lost. The engines roared to life again, a deep rolling thunder that shook the quiet street. But to Danielle, the sound no longer felt threatening. It was a chorus, a vow, a promise carried on the wind. The biker she had helped gave her a small nod, one that spoke louder than words, and the others followed his lead, raising their hands, some resting them on their hearts, others simply bowing their heads in respect. Danielle felt her throat tighten as tears welled in her eyes. Just yesterday, she had been a stranger at a gas station, acting on instinct, never expecting anything in return. Now, here she stood, surrounded by dozens of men who had come not to intimidate, but to honor. Her neighbors peeked through curtains, children whispered in awe from porches, but Danielle barely noticed. All she could see was the truth unfolding before her, that one act of kindness had rippled outward, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined. She realized that she hadn't just fueled a motorcycle, she had fueled hope, dignity, and connection in a world that often forgets how much we all need each other. As the bikers revved their engines in unison, the sound lifted her spirit rather than shaking it. Danielle stood tall in her doorway, hands pressed over her heart, feeling a warmth that spread deeper than words could capture. No act of kindness, she now knew with certainty, is ever wasted. Sometimes, it returns to you louder, stronger, and more beautiful than you could have dreamed.